Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is nice to be here today. Thank you for tuning in. We're just going to have a little look at the case rates for COVID over the last few months here, and some of the strange anomalies and these artifacts that keep popping out at me in the data. And I'm sure you've had these things pop out at you too if you're looking to any in any detail. We see here, obviously, we know about Sweden and the fact that they didn't really lock down to the extent that we did in England here and in many places around the world. France, Spain, Italy, obviously, as well. They seem to be doing very well at the moment. There doesn't seem to be any real uptick in cases for them. And we have here, we have the daily deaths in Sweden down substantially. Looks rather interesting. And we're having a look here, and we're just going to push forward. Daily new confirmed COVID-19 deaths per million people. Sweden seem right at the bottom here. What do we have? The Czech Republic, Spain, France, the UK has had a bit of an uptick. This is October 11th that they run these numbers to. Denmark as well, very low numbers. Italy haven't been substantially up at all, but Sweden is right there at the bottom. This is very good for them. Obviously, this is a great argument for not initiating more lockdowns. What's the point here? And people will say about the demographics of Sweden and the geography of Sweden, obviously being quite hilly and nice and remote for a lot of people, lots of towns and villages and so on that can and that obviously do remain reasonably isolated through the year, but not necessarily. It's not necessarily the case. Let's have a look now at Sweden. Here we go. In Sweden, there has been the same sharp increase in cases experienced elsewhere. Has not been, the same increases. Again, this is another chart you'll see. It's a reflection of the first one I just gave. Here's England. This is rather interesting. And now this stopped a few weeks ago, so this is a few weeks late now. Old now. But look at this: first wave cases versus deaths. This is pretty substantially different if you look at the second wave or the lack thereof. Obviously, the cases and deaths tally reasonably well over the first wave, but now looking at this. Now, where's the second wave in terms of deaths? And of course, what we've seen recently is this second wave in cases has been absolutely substantial. And we haven't had any real uptick. We've had a very small number of increased deaths, but it is getting colder. In England, we're now basically mid-October, and the rises in deaths has been insignificant, and this is the case for other places as well. Here we have the Netherlands, and we're going to go through the WHO data in just a second. We're going to see how the death rate in this coming into autumn is really very small, and it makes me wonder why we had so many deaths at the beginning of the year. It is a strange artifact for sure within these numbers. It doesn't make too much sense as far as I can see, and I think there have clearly been a number of ways that governments that testing that people dying of COVID might not actually have been dying of COVID. There may have been problems in testing. There was obviously problems because people were being put on ventilators, and this caused a lot of older people to die just being on ventilators and not being able to breathe properly coming off of them, because these ventilators breathe for you, and if you have weak lungs, then you're going to be substantially affected when being taken off the ventilator. So we have Spain here, no big uptick in deaths. Netherlands, no big uptick in deaths. This is something I put in there, just going back and doing this audio. So yeah, again here we see, just as an aside, typical causes of death per day in the UK in September 2020. Where's COVID here? Just second from the end on the right. I mean, these are not substantial numbers. These are small numbers here. There's a pandemic, and where we're still pretending that there's a pandemic here. Of course, the face masks and stuff. Here's CDC, just recent CDC data coming out. This is what we're looking at, guys. This is not something we should be particularly concerned about. You have a 99.997 chance of surviving this, or if you're 0 to 19 years old, and if you are over 70, still a 94.6% chance of surviving. Now, I absolutely agree, as many, obviously most sane common sense people would, that older people need to be isolating, need to be keeping away from the populace at large. It's very not the greatest thing to have to do, and of course if you're willing to take chances, then go for it. I don't mind at all. You might well have had the virus anyway, who knows, you might have built up the necessary antibodies, but I don't think that the government should be dictating in any way what people should be doing here. I'm a small government guy, I'm a freedom loving guy. I'm pretty sure a lot of you are too. The government should, I think, to a large extent, be staying out of this. It's an extremely unfortunate thing that happened in 2020, but we will get through this. It's quite likely that this we will, as a population, grow the necessary antibodies and get over this. Now let's have a look at Italy. New cases. There's a substantial uptick. Oh, but look at this. The daily deaths, very insignificant. Again, Spain. This is from yesterday. I got this information. So here, Spain, again a substantial uptick in cases. Oh, look at that, deaths. Certainly an uptick, but insubstantial, not very many, and a lot of older people are going to be succumbing to the flu this year, and they're obviously succumbing to COVID as well. This is unfortunate, but this is the way life is coming into winter every single year. This is what happens. It's unfortunate, but it's a part of life. Let's go to Belgium. New cases. Now, Belgium has, we've seen here a different arc in these trends, but we see cases, again, uptick, and deaths, hardly anything to report, to be honest. Sweden, this is a very important country to be talking about. They had a later uptick by June. They had quite significant cases, a rise in cases, and again you'll see the uptick here at the right. Let's have a look at the deaths. Nothing to report. Just insignificant numbers, very small, and of course every number is a tragedy. Every bar here represents people dying, but in terms of the population as a whole, again, this is not substantial. The flu kills hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people across the world every year. These individuals will usually be very old. It is sad. We should not be stopping the public from doing what they do, and we should certainly not be grinding to a whole economies around the world. This is ridiculous, I'm afraid. Austria, massive uptick in cases. It's just about almost, there's a one peak day there that hit in May time, and it's almost the same. It's at the same level numerically. Let's have a look at the deaths in Austria. Again, a little more of a rise, but not substantial. Netherlands, big uptick in cases. And they didn't have a huge number of cases to begin with, but let's have a look at the deaths again. Insubstantial, not much to look at. Austria, oh hang on, we got Austria twice. We do have Austria twice. I'm very sorry about that. Oh, Ireland, Ireland, uptick in cases, deaths almost nothing. Okay, and France, and again, same uptick, nothing to do with deaths. Now, this clearly, I mean, across these different countries, I've just focused on European countries, this is showing us that there must have been a substantial number of death packing, if I can say that, of inflated death numbers, of numbers that were being equated to deaths due to COVID. We already know now that the CDC put out a report not too long ago that showed that about 6% of people who were dying of COVID only had COVID. 6%. And of course, I mean, this was framed in not such a great way when this came out, but it was clear, I think, if you just read between the lines, what the CDC were driving at. And of course, dying of, you're not really going to die of COVID-19. You're going to die of respiratory illnesses and heart problems and other associated comorbidities over just COVID. So 6% of people who died purely from COVID. That's not a small number, but it's what it is, you know. So I just wanted to put that out there. I hope you're all right, and we're going to obviously be looking at this data a lot more in the coming weeks and months. It's roundly understood now that there were obviously, in England, 5,200 odd deaths were removed from the death figures because the people were dying of other things, but might have had COVID in the past, or there's a fellow that died of a car accident. It was marked as a COVID death. This is ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen. This is not helping the public at all. There has been a massive project of fear inducement in England and of course around the world, and we need to start thinking logically, seriously and rationally about this illness, and we cannot deal with much more of these draconian policies that are being applied by governments. And of course our economies need to bounce back strong over the Christmas period. Thank you very much for listening. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and don't be fearful. It's okay. This is a very sad thing that happened this year, but we can get through it. Whatever happened, to keep calm and carry on. Come on, guys. It's all right. Let's live, be happy, and evolve through this, I should say, and evolve through this. Okay, goodbye.